So we're going to start by talking a little bit about the history of HTML. So if you don't know what HTML stands for, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Now, HTML is the structure and content of a page. It's not the styling and it's not the interactivity, it's just the structure and the content. Now, back in the academic community in the year of 1989, early 1990s, it's not really a hard start date to HTML, but in that time, people were exchanging papers, giant thesis papers, and some scientific documents, technical documents and stuff. And they all have a very specific formatting. But when they are being exchanged, there was no way to actually send the format across the internet. So what I mean is, let's say you wanted to have a paper that looks like this. And this is just a style guide I found on writing scientific paper. So let's just take the abstract section. So your abstract look like there's a heading here. It's a little bit bold and bigger text. We've got this sort of introduction to part one of the abstract, and in a bunch of bullet points, we got italicized and bold text. And then it looks like we have a link to another part of the paper. And then lastly, we have some nested bullet points. So this information, if I wanted to send to somebody, but all I could send is text, so I can't send an image of this, I can't send like the actual structure of it. All I could send is some text, which might look like this. Now, the problem is, how do I take this text here, which is the same text over here, and encode the structure? How do I say that this abstract here is bold and bigger text, and so is this function, and there's a bullet point right there, and some other bullet points here? How do I encode it? So that is what HTML lets us do. It allows us to take some text and some content, and just by writing some other text on top of it, it lets us specify that this is a heading, this is bold, this is italicized, this is a link. And that last part there, link, is actually really important because that's where the name comes from, hypertext markup. Because HTML allows us to create hyperlinks, and linking two documents together is really important. Many scientific papers are going to be referencing other scientific papers, and HTML facilitated that and made a real big impact. And then it basically caught on. People started to realize that it's a very simple thing. It's not very intimidating. And so it moved kind of away from purely academic situations to a broader use, all the way up to MySpace. If you remember MySpace, if you ever had a MySpace account, you could actually edit your profile by just writing HTML. So there are people who are obviously not technical, but they were still able to write HTML and CSS to add some interesting features to pages and to make some customized visuals. So let's just keep that in mind. We have some giant text here that we want to be able to encode with some structure. I want to say that this is bold, and I want to say that there are some bullet points here, and so on and so forth. HTML allows us to do that using HTML tags. So what we basically do is we take some content in the middle and we sandwich it between an opening tag and a closing tag. This lets me specify specific parts of the page or the paragraph or the content that I can say that right between these two tags is bold, right between these two tags has a link, and right between these two tags is italicized, and so on. So I'll show you that. Now we can go through here and decide that, okay, this is going to be a heading on our page, and we wrap it in an H1 tag, which we haven't been introduced to yet, and we'll get there. But for now, this just lets us specify that this is the largest heading on our page. The next thing you might want to do is go ahead and make this bold here. So there's quite a few ways you can do this, but the simplest one is to wrap it in something called a B tag. And this is to say that the content here should be bold. For those who know HTML, you would know that the B tag is on its way out. It's being deprecated, which is to say that you shouldn't use it anymore, but it will work if you use it. There's another alternative, which we'll get to in a little bit, so just stay tuned for that. Likewise, I may want to add something. Let's say a separate paragraph. So I want to add some space in between this line and the next line. So I add the paragraph, And what that will do is whatever is between these two tags goes on its own line. So as you can see, the general rule applies to all the tags we've seen where we've had an H1 tag, a bold tag, paragraph tag. Now don't focus too much on the tags themselves just yet. We're going to have plenty of videos discussing the individual ins and outs of all the tags. But again, remember this pattern where we have the tag name starting, the tag name closing, and some content in between. So in the next video, I'm going to actually make a new real HTML file. So it's not just a scientific document with some text, but a real file, and we're going to open it in our browser and actually see the HTML.